Welcome back for the final installment of the 7th console generation retrospective. And today we look at the final of the three for the 7th gen. That being, of course, the PS3, which arguably over time has ended up neck and neck with the 360 as my personal favorite from this generation. It's pretty much an even tie between both. But everybody has their own cup of tea, has their own taste, whatever it be, whatever genre it be, whether it is action, RPGs, platformers. Nevertheless, it does not change the fact that the PS3 is an incredible console and quite a nice library. Unfortunately, unlike past ones, it would end up having a little bit more trouble in the beginning years, mainly because of the price point when it would launch. It would be a couple $100 more than the 360 at launch. Though, as time went on, between the Red Ring of Death for the early original model 360, which would really hurt it in the beginning. Now, a few years later, with the PS3, they would change marketing strategies after they would appoint a newer in charge of, at the time, the new head of Sony of America. And with new marketing, plus coming out with the slim model, they would be able to drastically decrease the price, though unfortunately it would mean they would also remove the backwards compatibility part of the console from the original early model PS3s, which have now made the early model PS3s a bit more of a collector's item and a bit more expensive to collect or try to get hold of, given of the backwards compatibility factor, though it was known to also some hardware malfunctions and stuff in the early model PS3s as well. That's why I usually tell people, if you're gonna get like a console, especially more nowadays, it's best to wait at least 1 or 2 years down the line, maybe a small price drop plus a better variety of games, as well as the game prices are going to be a bit cheaper as well. So always keep that in mind. But it would be a couple years after I got the 360, I would actually finally pick up PS3. And I will say, there's a slew of games, no matter what the genre your taste is in gaming. The PS3 does have a great selection of games. A few of the main ones that stand out to me, however, for me personally, uh, would be the very first Far Cry game I actually ever played would be on the PS3. Of course, that being Far Cry 3, which in many people's opinions is probably the best of the Far Cry series. Now, some people also debate like the earlier Far Cries, though I have no previous knowledge, because outside of Far Cry 3, I've only played a little bit of Far Cry 4, and that's it. That's the only knowledge I have in the Far Cry series. Though I will say I still highly like 3, mainly for the earlier villain. Of course, being around the front there, and he's definitely become probably the most iconic villain in the Far Cry franchise. But still, nevertheless, it is definitely a great first person shooter that I recommend for the PS3. You can get the game there cheap, it's not hard to find. That's a couple of good reasons to get it. Also, a more criminally underrated game I wish would get more recognition than it does, unfortunately. And the thing is, we can also get this game really cheap as well. Um, and that being, of course, Batman Arkham Origins, which for me personally is my second favorite Arkham game, just behind Arkham Asylum. Though I have yet to really place Arkham City, and I know I was not impressed at all with Arkham Knight, personally. But Arkham Origins, I love it, even if it doesn't have some of the original voice cast like Kevin Conroy, or, of course, also Mark Hamill, though the people they would get in the roles would do a great job. The guy who does Joker in this actually, I think, is great. He does a great impersonation of Mark Hamill, but he also sounds a little bit younger, which makes sense since this is a prequel game to Arkham Asylum, so it makes sense actually have a little bit younger sounding voice. Also, I like the game because of having great villains in it as well. I mean, it has some great boss fights in my opinion. Deathstroke is pretty enjoyable in this game. But there's a lot of things I have to say. I wish more people would give Arkham Origins more fair shot. Next, being the second ever fighting game I would actually ever play, and of course it would become my favorite version of Street Fighter 4. Of course, that being Street Fighter 4, or rather Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. But yeah, it would be the second ever fighting game I would play on the PS3. The game, like the others I've mentioned so far, again, game is dirt cheap. Great to collect. That's the thing in general. I tell people, if you haven't started collecting PS3, I recommend it because you can get a huge amount of like games for PS3 or 360 at rock bottom prices right now. Best to get it before people start feeling nostalgic. That's when prices go through the roof. I mean, look at like PS2 game prices are going up, and like I've mentioned, PS1 prices have really been going up for a few years now. So it's best to start collecting PS3 while you have a chance, as well as 360, since both are reasonable, both have great catalogs of exclusives, and great multi-platforms. This being one of them. Also, my introduction to the Souls series, though technically speaking, this would not actually be the first Souls game I would ever play. The first Souls game I would actually ever play would be Dark Souls 1. But then I would go back and check out the originally, of course, the Sony exclusive, that being, of course, the one that really started the Souls series, at least with Souls in the title. That being the original Demon Souls, which was an early on game for the PS3 lifespan. This is arguably one of the best games on the PS3, though unfortunately it has a lot of glitch issues here and there, not the greatest hitbox ratio. There's definitely a lot of major issues with the original classic, but you can still get it very affordable, very reasonable, and it's not a high in demand game, so I don't see for now it really going up. Also, if you like great action games from the makers of the Metal Gear Solid series, you have, of course, Metal Gear Rising, where you play as, of course, well, a specific individual that I'm pretty much sure about everyone is familiar with nowadays, as long as you played the earlier Metal Gear Solid games, I'm sure. But Raiden is awesome, and the game is non-stop great blast of fun with lots and lots of action and definitely over-the-top boss battles, and it's just everything that's fun. In my opinion, this is probably one of the best action games, hands down, on the PS3, and also very affordable. As I've said, get these games now while you have the chance. They are a lot of fun, they are great. You can also get this on the 360, but I do recommend getting the PS3 version, but to each their own. Many other great things were some of the HD releases we would see in the 7th gen. One of the best exclusives of re-releases would be the double pack of course, Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, which is superb games, and to me this is the best way to play Ico, in my opinion, though. Shadow of the Colossus, this is a great HD port, though nowadays I would say you're probably better just getting the remake on PS4, but if you don't have a PS4 or you Though, to be fair, that version is very cheap. But you can still get this very affordable, and I recommend getting this maybe not so much for Shadow the Colossus, but for Ico. Because the PS2 version of Ico is starting to go up a little bit in price. So I do recommend this is probably the more economic wise choice to go with. But it is a great double pack. I recommend people get as many HD collections as you can before the prices go up like the Ratchet and Clank collection. Arguably, in many people's opinions, the one of the pillars of storytelling in games of the PS3 era. Of course, that being the original The Last of Us. Probably, arguably, one of the most beloved post-apocalyptic or zombie apocalypse type worlds. The storytelling in this game is superb. I'm not even going to, of course, mention anything about a certain sequel and stuff, given that's also on another platform. But this is a great game. You can get this also very affordable. You're probably better off getting the PS4 remaster version, which also has extra DLC included. But if you don't get this, you can get it very easily, probably $10 or less. Very affordable, and it's definitely more than worth the price. It is a superb game that actually still plays really great on the PS3, in my opinion. Arguably one of the best looking games. Then we go to a game I think is criminally underrated. It's starting to go up a little. On average, it's going for $20 or $30, but still recommend getting it before it gets too expensive, like most of the Silent Hill games are doing now. But this is a great game. I think it's criminally underrated. Maybe about the most underrated, or maybe second most underrated Silent Hill game, right behind Silent Hill 4: The Room. But Silent Hill Downpour is a great game. It's on, of course, a couple of different platforms. So I do say it probably plays best here, though it might play just as good on the 360. Not sure. I've never played any of the Silent Hill games on 360. So I can't say one way or the other, but I love this game, and I wish more people would give this game a shot. It has great side quests and everything, which is actually quite enjoyable. I mean, the side quests, some of them are definitely more than worth doing because there are certain rewards that make it more than worth it. That's why I've always been very pro, like, side quest type person. I've always enjoyed because sometimes it definitely pays off. But seriously, the game is great, and it is actually the only sort of open world Silent Hill game. There's not a huge variety of enemies or creature types in the game, but it is still a great game nevertheless, and I highly recommend it to anyone if you like horror games. With that said, we go on to the first ever fighting game I would actually play on the PS3, and of course that is the original vanilla version of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, The Fate of Two Worlds, which I love this steelbook. With that said, hopefully you're enjoying the music I chose in the background. Also, other criminally underrated games I highly recommend if you ever get a chance. A great third-person action game. Takes place in Neo, Paris. It's a great action game from Capcom, criminally underrated. Great customization with like different types of combos and stuff you can do for fighting multiple enemies, as well as the fact you can do in the game the ability to manipulate and control people's memories. Kind of makes sense given it's called Remember Me. Sadly, there's not a huge amount of that in the game, and that's like one of the areas I think this game shines. Graphically, this game does look really good for... I honestly wish this game would get an HD treatment. Like, seriously, Capcom. Please remaster Remember Me. But seriously, get this game. Very affordable. It's a great action game if you like sort of like post-apocalyptic type, cyberpunkish, like future type games. This is actually a great game in my opinion. Also, talk about games that I love. This would be actually the first AC game I would play on a Sony platform, it would be the second ever Assassin's Creed game I would play. I would end up at first skipping AC2. I played the original on 360, and then I'd play AC3 on the PS3. This game is superb. I wish this game would get more love than it does. And I'm glad there are at least a few people that appreciate this game. I like it for the time setting and everything during the Revolutionary War in the US, which is really cool, and the expansion is also very interesting what if scenario. But this platform would also get another, in my opinion, criminally underrated AC game, and that is Assassin's Creed Rogue, which is arguably one of the best games in the series. Both games are fun. I like this game partially because some early on parts of the game end up taking place in Ireland, which is really cool, the land of Era. But there would be many different things. I love the naval stuff in Rogue, as well as in Assassin's Creed 3. Most people automatically go Assassin's Creed 4. Not a bad game. I just wish Rogue would get a little more love than it does. It's definitely more unique than other games in the series. Assassin's Creed 3 is still great. Nevertheless, these are both games I highly recommend that are criminally underrated, and you can get very reasonable price. Getting now down to the last few, arguably one of the best action games of the 7th generation, which I recommend to anyone. Also a great game from Capcom, and that is Oshawa's Wrath. A game that is so ridiculously over-the-top cheese fest, and I love it completely for the cheesiness of everything. But I wish more people would actually give this game a fair shot, because it is that good. Also, of HD stuff I highly recommend. I recommend Zone of the Enders, definitely HD collection. I played this specifically for Zone of the Enders 1 in HD because you can play Zone of the Enders 2 now on, of course, current gen and stuff with even a VR mode. But still, this is the best way to play, in my opinion, Zone of the Enders 1. And it's a reasonable price, and can get both games in it. Then we go to arguably the first anime fighter that I really got into, is thanks to the PS3, and that is, of course, Under Night in Birth, a true classic game from Arc System Works, and this is a game that arguably deserves a lot more love than it gets. Unfortunately, it's more of a niche game. Then again, I would say about half of Arc System Works games are niche. Probably one of the main series they have that actually made it bigger in the mainstream of fine game was probably, well, between Guilty Gear and Blaze Blue being their two biggest. Under Night and Birth, in my opinion, is the best, but to each their own. And to be fair, this was the first Arc System Works games I really honestly got into. Later on, thanks to this game, I would get into, of course, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, which is another superb game. Also, would be my first introduction really into the indie game scene, would be on the PS3, of course, that being with the Journey collection, which is superb, and you get two smaller other indie games along with Journey. Journey is a game I hold very highly regard. It is arguably my favorite indie game of all time, and it was what really opened up my eyes to give more of a chance to the indie scene. And now, probably 50% of any games I play now are indie games. So I have to thank Journey a lot for introducing me to this whole scene of pure creativity. Second to last, a superb game or HD collection, of course, that being Tekken Hybrid, which is starting slowly to go up in price, so if you get a chance, get it while you can for an okay price range. You get, of course, the Tekken Blood Vengeance movie, as well as a, at the time, demo of Tekken Tag Tournament 2, and, of course, HD version of Tekken Tag Tournament from PS2. This is a great deal overall package. I mean, I love getting to play Tekken Tag Tournament in HD is nice. Though unfortunately, this version of the game would not include the 101 option that you could play in the PS2 version. Unfortunately, they removed it for some reason from the HD release. Why, I'm not quite sure, but still, just something to know. You would have to get the PS2 version if you want the 101 mode. But I think that's okay not having it, since the whole key gimmick to the game is the tag system. And the fact it's awesome going back and forth and finding what combination you like the best. Arguably last, you would have to import for physical, of course, Vampire Resurrection, also known as Darkstalker's Resurrection. And this is a collection I highly recommend to anyone, given has a cool customization of the mechanics and stuff. Basically, you have stuff, characters, and everything from, of course, like Vampire Hunter and Vampire Savior, which is, of course, great games. In my opinion, Vampire Savior is one of the best looking 2D games of all time, and this is surprisingly good. The online is okay. It's not super awful compared to some of the Street Fighter games. Still great, but criminally underrated. In my opinion, the PS3 had some of the best games of any Sony platform, which is a reason why it's a game that, as time has gone on, it's a console I have come to respect and admire more and more. And arguably, at the end of the day, I may just barely wedge it out over the 360 from this gen. Mainly for fighting games and a few other elements. The only thing really, for me personally, 360 has in their favor is Halo and Fable. Predominantly, that is it. And also some of the multi-platform games play better on it too. But with that said, that is it for the end of the 7th console generation retrospective. Just a little walk down memory lane with me for the PS3, so leave a comment. What is your personal favorite games on the PS3? What is your favorite console from the 7th generation? But with that said, I'll see y'all soon enough. Stay safe. See you again, same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.